Welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Central-Elgin for Monday, 17th of July at 1 o'clock here in the council chambers as well as virtually. If I could ask you to stand for the national anthem, please. Municipality of Central-Elgin acknowledges that it is located on the land of the McKee Treaty that was signed by the Wyandot and Anishinaabe nations, including ancestors of the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation. It is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandaronk, and Mississauga Nation. These First Nations continue to provide ongoing stewardship of the land and waters in the municipality of Central-Elgin. Council, does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, any discussion on the minutes from the last meeting, please? If I could get a mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Noble, Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council dated June 26, 2023 be adopted.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ms. Leach, if you'd call the vote, please. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Carried. Two delegations today. First, I'd like to welcome His Worship, Mayor Joe Preston. If you'd come to the podium here, sir. Mayor Preston will be providing council with an update on the Volkswagen development site. Welcome.
Why don't I turn this on so that I can be heard? All right, perfect. I do it all the time at home too. Thank you for allowing me to come and visit today. It's been great to a couple of months moving forward, but we have started to be able to share much more information than we were able to at the beginning. And we'd like to make it a habit of coming and filling you in as soon as with whatever information we can and answer whatever questions that we can of yours. There still is some areas, of course, we still just don't know the answers to, but I'll let you know on those if you ask that question. And so I simply want to tell you we're moving forward about as rapidly as we can be. You know, the city of St. Thomas has established an industrial development team now also that is responsible for, and our former chief engineer is leading that is responsible for the initial construction work and land development for the plant. And we have started now, certainly well on the way. If you've been out there at all, there's a lot of dirt being moved, a lot of earth being moved, and a lot of preparation for the installation of servicing for, first of all, the PowerCo Volkswagen plant, and then the whole site on its own. There's more than a couple of public meetings already been established, and this week looking for comment on what would happen to Highbury Avenue between Ron McNeil and South Edgeware, and then south of there. And also the request for public opinion on the Highway 3 bypass being extended into the site across Centennial to Yarmouth Center, so that there's an access vehicular access to the site. And we'll share more as each of those public discussions go forward. But if I can share with you, I think Highbury within the borders of St. Thomas will become about a 6-lane road or a little more from Ron McNeil south to South Edgeware, where there would be a roundabout if all of this carries on, and it would then head diagonally over to meet the Highway 3 bypass. So that's what we're doing inside. There's still a lot of discussion as to what the MTO will carry on doing outside. We're now privy to most of that. It's open for discussion. It appears as though the Highway 3 bypass will be completely twinned from where it exits that industrial site all the way across to where it will eventually hit Highway 4, where at the portion where Highway 4 is already 4 lanes, and then connect from there to what will be a new intersection or a new connection to the 401 at Highway 4 and the 401. So a pretty direct 4-lane route from St. Thomas to the 401, and the shortest distance. So I wouldn't have guessed that. How many times has your GPS said you should go Highway 4 and you go, forget this, I'm going down Highbury, and it always tells you it's a shorter route. Well, they're right, it is. So and I think I'll leave it at that and answer your questions. This has been a year of pretty hard work, and probably the last 3 months we've been able to discuss some of it with the public and yourselves, and even in the last 2 or 3 months, more and more information to ourselves too. So please, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Mayor Preston. I'm going to start the questions. I just appreciate you coming and making yourself available. Some of the concerns that we have in the short term are the calls that we're getting for constituents, be it the councillors, the deputy mayor,
Right.
myself, about the roads, about access. And I've mentioned, I think in our chats or before, about the need for a community liaison and a
Yep.
way that our council here, deputy, myself, when something comes forward, that we have somewhere we can go. The county
Right.
staff and our staff are very good at helping us out, but I think there's some areas there, some opportunities to work together.
Clearly.
I just wanted to ask you about that.
Well, clearly, and I know that you and I have had a number of chats, but we'd like to be able to make it where someone has a question. Certainly, we're establishing a website now that will have a number of frequently asked questions on it, so that some of the information will become, once it gets asked, it will be out there. But I'd like any of you right now, use me as your conduit. If there's something you have not heard, or maybe even worse, what tends to happen is something you have heard in a coffee shop or in a drive shed, please give us a call and we'll try and share with you as much information as we can, and as much factual information as we can as to whether that's a true thought or not. So certainly, your worship, between you and me, our cell phones work and we've been using them regularly. So between the rest of council, I would not mind that at all.
Perfect. I'm going to open the floor. I have another question, but I'd like to first talk to City Council about any questions they have for Mayor Preston. Councillor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan to Mayor Preston. When you're talking about potentially adding an intersection, where are we looking at that?
Adding a
when you were talking about the roadworks that'll happen, you were talking about there needing to be the addition of a new intersection. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, well, we're between two. We're inside St. Thomas. We certainly can go do our public meetings and start our own work. And so the stretch of Highbury and South Edgeware and the connection over to the Highway 3 bypass, we think we can move on fairly well on our own. The MTO, though, is responsible for the rest of the highways, and they've come forward with their proposal as to what that would be. My understanding is it will be a fairly urgent piece for them to complete too, but the overpass at Highway 4 and the 401 was already scheduled for rebuild, and so now this would become part of that. But we know that interchange overpasses are more than a 2-year build. So we can guess if we haven't seen a shovel in the ground, we're still a couple of years away from finishing an overpass. We don't expect first product to come out of the PowerCo plant until late 2026. So we still do have that ability to do a number of things at once and still complete in reasonably good order, provided everything else cooperates.
Thanks. Another question, Mayor Preston, is you talked about overpasses and roads, perhaps hybrid being up to 6 lanes.
Yeah.
So if we're twinning the number 3 across, we still have to get across Wellington Road.
Yes.
A concern. And I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts or could comment on what will happen if the road, the bypass is twinned, what it looks like.
And how it passes the Wellington, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I knew completely. I know right now the public study is out there for comment as to whether that would be an overpass or a 2-lane roundabout at the intersection of where those two meet. And both are possible, of course, even as we're finding that 2-lane type roundabout is fantastic for transports also. So it could be either, but certainly not our decision. So we're hoping that MTO is keeping you as apprised as it can too, as it starts to make decisions. And I recognize they're probably not far enough along on we're going to make this decision for sure. They're on the fact-finding pieces too. So if this council or the municipality, and including Southwold, has more information or thoughts to share like that, Mayor, then I think we all better make sure we're sharing them.
Okay. So it's July 2023. You just said that it looked like it would be 2026 until the first product, or
right.
Early 27. What do the following couple of years look like, Mayor Preston?
Well, the PowerCo plant will start to be finished and open for operation sometime late 2026 by the timetables we have. We all have run into supply chain issues and other things in the last little while, so we don't know. We're doing our best to meet that exact timeline. They can train up staff and start training how to and install the equipment in the factory in that timeline. We do not have any belief that the total plant will be finished on that date, but in starting at the southern edge of the factory and working up, the bottom will be finished long before the top is finished. That may be a better way to put it, but eventually the whole thing will be whole and a full facility. So what year that is that another year of that happening, or can it all happen before 2026 is a real good question. I'm sorry, but I still have trouble picturing 13 to 14 million square feet. It's still beyond. I go out and stand on the site and you cannot even get in your head what size that would be.
And you said it was 13 times the size of the Amazon plant.
It is 13 million square feet to 14 million square feet. The Amazon facility by square feet would be just above 800,000, I believe. So it's a million. Let's say it's a million. So it's 13 of those.
Wow.
If you wanted to take the old Ford assembly plant, that was 3.5 million square feet. So 4 of those. It's a significantly sized building. That's a better way to put it.
Very good. What's your biggest concern today?
I agree with you, and I know you and I have had this conversation that because of the contest to achieve the plant from Volkswagen, there's been a maybe over the top amount of secrecy that we think is now starting to fade away and drop off from the project. So my biggest thing is still being able to communicate well with neighboring municipalities and the county. I just set up a meeting with the warden for he and I to meet and have this same kind of conversation this week as to what's the best way to share the information that we do know. We were quite limited in the beginning as to who we could talk to and what we could say. And we recognize that hasn't been positive, but it allowed us to win this factory. And so now that that's done, let's start talking about what it means to all of us, what the roads surrounding it will be, and how we can share other services together to make this work. That's my biggest concern. Obviously, there's a timing concern also, Your Worship, is this is a very tight contract with them to have certain things done by certain dates. And although the province of Ontario and Infrastructure Ontario is helping a great deal with this, it's really we've had pretty good weather this summer, and if we have the ability to build through the winter, it helps us keep track. But the timing of it is, there's some contractual reasons why it has to be done at certain times.
Thank you. Councillor Connors, did you have a question, sir?
Yes, through you, Mayor Sloan, Mr. Preston, Mayor Preston. Recently, I'm in Ward 4 in Central-Elgin. Recently, we had a town hall and a number of questions surfaced regarding the new plant and the benefits for Central-Elgin. And I know that there's meetings going on, discussions going on. I know we can talk about the roadways and access and stuff. The question that seemed to come forward most was, what is the benefit, or what do you see? What's your opinion of the benefit for Central-Elgin? Other than, the jobs, what else can Central-Elgin look forward to?
Well, I think it gives us a smooth growth forward. I continue to say the greatest benefit I see from what we've been able to accomplish with this is the ability for our young people to stay here. That the types of jobs that we're creating are the types of jobs where for many years, we've all been through this, where people will go off to college or university and then never return back home, whether it's to St. Thomas or to Central-Elgin. We think the types of jobs that are being created as part of this makes us a community that has that ability. So one of the biggest things I think that will happen to all of us for miles around, and even speaking with Mayor Morgan in London, we just keep saying if we can continue to attract the type of jobs where the salary in that job allows you to buy a house in the community you live in, then that's a real huge positive. And that's what we're saying this is. So that's the other biggest community kind of benefit there is. We're pretty aware that not everything that can happen to make the PowerCo Volkswagen plan a success will happen inside the borders of St. Thomas. It cannot. We cannot build enough housing for the people that will live there. We'll be counting on Central-Elgin and Southwold and London and Ingersoll and Tillsonburg to also be helping us with that, with helping supply the housing that goes with it. We've taken a pretty good turn in the last little while to try and put market rent apartments at the top of the list of the things that have to happen. Our home builders are incredible, and they'll be able to build the homes needed as they're needed and in the short period of time. There's been other areas of housing that have been left not happening in our communities for 2 decades. And so we're really trying to push for that. So we think one of the other benefits that will happen is we'll see a better way of moving forward. The smart growth we keep talking about is the ability to grow, the ability to do it within the boundaries of what we're capable of doing from a housing point of view, a jobs point of view, a servicing point of view. So all of this will happen.
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. I would like to dive a little further into what Councillor Connors asked there, though. My community asks a lot of similar questions, and it is an undisputed fact that's been very well researched that residential land costs a lot more for a municipality to service than industrial land does. And with what you're proposing, ultimately, we end up hosting more of the homes that support the workers of this project. And of course, St. Thomas has the industrial. So could you speak more to the balance of the benefit there for the other communities?
Yeah, it's hard to say there's a balance. Industrial land in our case does not pay development charges. So oftentimes it takes a great deal of your servicing, whether it's wastewater, water, and other pieces, but there's not a development charge piece for industrial land. We do that to attract the jobs that go with the rest. But you're absolutely right. Then that leaves the single family homes and multi-unit apartments or market rent apartments and anything in between those two as the ones that pay the development charges that pay for the growth that make that happen. So I can't dispute your logic. You're absolutely right. It's an expensive piece going forward that the municipalities need to be sure that we're collecting the right amount for in order to handle that growth. And as Mayor Sloan and I have been talking, we think there's some and more ways we can share the servicing that goes with those things, but that's a complicated process at the moment because it takes a long time to build a wastewater plant. So we're working pretty hard to make sure what we build together or separately serves all of our goods over our lifetime would probably be a better way to put it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor Preston. You spoke a little bit about added services. So the sewage plant, do we have a plan where we're going to put that?
Yeah, well, we've already started. We know that you're doing a wastewater study also, and in conversation with Southwold, I don't think it's a secret that all of us are looking for what will the needs be for the three of us to do it. We had to commit that there is enough wastewater capacity for Volkswagen to say yes to this site. So we know that out of the Sunset Drive wastewater plant, there is. What we're trying to determine now on usage and as the design of the plant goes forward, how much is left over? How much more can we quickly grow into housing with or other industries with, and how much better we let's hurry up and move towards a site for wastewater and the capacity for wastewater. We all know these aren't, you can't snap your fingers. There's about a 5-year plan for a new wastewater plant. So we've started the clock ticking. I know you have also started your clock ticking, but let's see where we can work together to make this maybe quite a bit bigger, but collective. But it's hard right now for us to make that commitment till we start getting answers back on the environmental assessment that goes with a wastewater plant.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, to you, Mayor Preston. In the recent news reports, there was talk of the Volkswagen CEO over in Germany calls for an immediate freeze on spending, and all is at stake. So is that going to affect our building going on here? And are they bound by any true agreement that makes them want to or have to build something here?
Yes, I suggest that the agreements have that type of wording in it. But if I could finish the quote you had for the president of Volkswagen, we must watch our spending on our growth on all of our industries except EV. Except EV batteries is our most priority and will continue to be our priority, and we will not be looking at any movement on that sector. So I felt pretty good when I read the whole thing and got to that point. I feel very comfortable having spent a great deal of time on the relationship with Volkswagen. I feel comfortable they'll be pretty straight with us on anything they have to do. They chose us over a lot of municipalities around the world. And I think this probably gives them great thought as to why they need to keep this relationship where it is, both with us or all with us, the provincial government and the federal government, and different commitments made to different levels of government.
Thank you. Council, any further questions? Mayor Preston, thank you for taking the time today. We appreciate it and look forward to future.
Please have me back. At any time you come up with questions, I'm going to try and make a little bit of the roadshow now to say, as we change, there's a neat new website also, the video of how the plant is growing and it's on our economic development website. Take a look. And the first version of it is a pretty unique view of what's happened so far. But each week, that group will be putting out more video of what's happening out there and answering more and more of the FAQs that are out there for everyone. I didn't get a chance to speak of the police thing, and perhaps I know
Sure.
that was a topic in the last week.
Take a moment. That'd be great.
Part of the agreement with Volkswagen with the province of Ontario was that there would be some coverage for the factory from a tactical policing point of view. And we knew right from the beginning that those words were being used, and we knew it was happening that way. Our police and there's an element of fire safety to that too, that Volkswagen had asked for, and we will have to expand a certain amount of servicing even in our fire services. But look, we've been cooperatively working with the Ontario Provincial Police True Team through a lot of other processes anyway, and we think this is in talking to the chief, we feel comfortable that this is a good thing. We will have to police all of the land that is inside the city of St. Thomas. Our police will always police all of it, but Volkswagen has asked for a level of support from the Ontario Provincial Police, and we'll watch now how that moves forward. But I feel comfortable. I'd rather have better servicing than less servicing, so I feel comfortable that this is a pretty good way to go. And I'll leave it at that because I've taken a lot of your time today.
Nope, it's great. Again, just to underscore, we are getting a lot of, callers and constituents about the roadworks. And
Right.
as soon as we have more information from a website or a community liaison
Right.
type person, I'll continue to keep you abreast. of
Forward them to us. We'll try and get as much answered back through our industrial development as we
Sure.
can. And MTO has been fairly good at starting to share much more information with us too.
Because you'll agree, we're just at the beginning.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Very good. Thank
All
you
right.
for your time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Next, we are going to hear from the St. Thomas-Elgin Local Immigration Partnership. And I think welcome Petrusia Hontar, who is the project manager. And you are going to introduce us to some of the services. And we appreciate you sending in advance your PowerPoint, which I'm sure Council have all had a chance to take a look at. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a little bit of time since I've been able to come and present to Central Elgin. The last opportunity I was here, it was with very many different faces around the table. So I did want to introduce myself. My name is Petrusia Hontar, and I have been on this project since it started. So I have a very thorough knowledge of everything that goes on, and I'm very happy to help people understand the back history and how we came to be today. I'm assuming this works? Yes. So what is STELIP? We often refer to ourselves as STELIP, and that is the St. Thomas-Elgin Local Immigration Partnership. So we do work with this whole region, so St. Thomas, including all the surrounding municipalities, which would include obviously Central Elgin. We are funded federally, so we're funded by Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And that funding began in our community in 2011. In that year, we were tasked with the responsibility to understand the needs of immigrants within our region. And after a year of research and community connections, we came together with a report and some recommendations to the community. And ever since that, so since 2012, we've been tasked with go and do it. So the types of projects and the type of things that we do within this region is really based on the needs of the community and is not mandated by IRCC or Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. It is a quite uniquely funded project. I don't know of very many federally funded projects that are given so much autonomy. And what is it that we are tasked to do? We are tasked to build community capacity to better support immigrant integration. We do not directly serve immigrants. We do have two very great settlement services that are located in our community, one of them at the YWCA and a second one in Elmer at Mennonite Community Services. Both of them are both federally and provincially funded, and they are the community groups that are tasked to work directly with immigrants and support them with all of the things that it takes to integrate into our community. Our role is more to work with the community to assist that and to assist the community to do better and to increase the speed at which people can integrate. So the vision that we have been working under for the last few years is the St. Thomas and Elgin County communities will be a culturally diverse, welcoming, caring, and inclusive community that will retain current residents, welcome newcomers, and provide them the opportunity to successfully integrate, contribute to, and benefit from social, cultural, and economic inclusion. All of that is to say is that we want people to be engaged in our community in every sense of that meant of engagement. So we don't want people just to come here and to live isolated in their homes. We want them to contribute to the growth and the rich culture of this region. Our council is comprised of a diverse subset of agencies across the community. This is our current membership list. We do have also a community member who sits to help advise the work we do. We are always looking to invite more people and to welcome more people to the table who, if they want to be part of the conversation. So if anyone here in this community would like to join us, we definitely welcome you. And based on this current composition of our council, we have come up with 5 different priority areas, and each of those work to focus on different areas of integration. The first one is workforce development and employer supports. And it is quite timely that I was able to come and speak after Joe Preston gave some updates about the incoming VW plant. So looking at workforce development, this means our newcomers who are settling in our community, are they ready and able to work? But also looking at our employers, do they have the tools and skills to help that integration and help onboarding new and diverse staff? We also look at community readiness. This looks at our general community. Do they understand what diversity is? Are they welcoming? Are they culture, or do they welcome other cultures? Are they really embracing different religions and different people who may be coming from different parts of the world? So under this, we do a lot of video campaigns and a lot of different community events that help start conversation and help people make connections when they may not have done that in the past. We also look at equitable supports, and this means our services in our community, are they able to provide the supports that might be necessary for immigrants? Do we have access to interpretation services? Are services being offered in a culturally appropriate manner? Education is looking to see, do our immigrants have the opportunities to upskill, to get educated on the Canadian context, on what it means to be in our community? And the last one is civic and social inclusion. We really want to see our newcomers and our immigrants feeling like they have a stake in the game and that they have the ability to give back and to be part of what makes our community our community. I wanted to take the opportunity to highlight some of the things that we've been up to lately. So the last presentation I did was about a experience as a discrimination survey. And one of the things that came out was we really wanted to know the why. So in that first survey, it was a qualitative survey where people were recruited through telephone calls and then invited to do an online survey. And we had about just over 400 people participate in that survey. And about half of those 400 were immigrants or racialized individuals. And what we found was that 7 out of 10 of those individuals had said that they'd experienced discrimination within our community in the last 4 years, which means we really need some work to do. We asked about where that was happening, and we had some really baseline information. I do encourage everyone here to read that report, and it is available on our website. But one of the things that we found through that was people wanted to say, but what exactly is happening? If we say that there's discrimination happening at our municipal services, what is happening? If they're in our arenas, is it the staff? Is it the other people attending the arenas? Or is it something else that we're not sure of? So we've entered another partnership with Western University, and we're doing a second phase to that study, and we're currently still recruiting participation. So it's an invitation to any immigrant or racialized individual who has experienced discrimination in the last 4 years to participate in a one-to-one interview to give some more details so we can paint a fuller picture of what is happening. And one of the things that we're finding is that people are having a hard time really understanding or really validating their experiences of discrimination. Oftentimes we're hearing, oh, but it wasn't that serious, or I don't want to be a bother. So when we say discrimination, we're talking about anything from someone making inappropriate jokes, using language that is not welcoming, or anything more egregious that could be more physical. So again, if you know of anyone who might be interested in sharing their experiences, we can share their contact with Western and they can take part in that study. Last month, we also did our first ever immigrant survey. And this was a survey that was open to anyone in the community who had moved to or who was born outside of Canada. So it was irrespective of if someone had moved here 70 years ago, if someone had moved here last week. We're hoping to duplicate this survey every 2 years. And despite I was on vacation last week, so I haven't had much time to go through the data. But once I do have some opportunity to see what it says, I'll very happily share it with everyone here about what it is our immigrants are noticing or seeing, what types of services they are accessing or aren't accessing. And we did have a question about what are something that our municipal staff could be doing to improve their situation. We recently also completed a guidebook to help community groups or individuals who are planning events to think about the way that they're planning their events. This is under the creating a community that is more culturally inclusive. So instead of it being a checklist of what you should include, it is meant to help create thought, help people think or just guide them on what they can think about to make sure that their events are going to be a good experience for everyone. This is a guide that is available for free online. We've also developed a training that can happen. So we would happily come and work with any community groups that you know of that are doing a large event where you're trying to attract many people from the community. We've also updated our newcomer information package. This was a package that was conceived in 2012, so it was really due for some updating. We found that at the time that we had a lot of directories in our region where it was lists of phone numbers and names of services, but not much explanation about what those services did. So if you didn't grow up in Canada or in a community, you often didn't know where to turn to or what you can get in terms of support. So we've updated this book. We've made some areas more robust. I do have a paper copy, which there should be a binder somewhere in this room, so I could leave that here. But I would also ask that a link to the online version be included on your website so that anyone coming into our community knows how to access services. And trying to understand and put it into place why I'm talking about immigration and integration in this particular context, Central-Elgin. I've pulled some stats from the census 2021. So all of these statistics are reflective of May 2021. So there has definitely been some changes over the last year, but unfortunately, this is what we have access to. So we had a population of just under 14,000 at the time, and this was a 9% growth over the previous census year. I'm sure everyone here is aware that this community is booming. It is just shy of the growth that we saw in St. Thomas, and that's no doubt that we're definitely experiencing that. One thing to note is that the median population of Central-Elgin is 48.8. The median population for Canada and Ontario is 41.6, which means this to me says that there's a lot more people coming here to retire, which means that we don't have as much of a working population. So when we're looking at things like economic growth and more job opportunities, we don't have as big of a population to take those workforce from. So it's something to consider when you're trying to understand the need for attraction. To understand who it is that's settling in this region, and that 1 year of immigration. So the way that they look at immigration, they have all immigrants, essentially anyone born outside of Canada. And for that, we have about a 9.8 or just under 10% of people who call Central-Elgin home who were born outside of Canada. And the recent immigrants are people who moved here to Canada within the last 5 years, so over the census period. And there we have about 1% of the current population who had came in that last 5 years. So something to note is the change of the demographics or the source countries that we're seeing in the people who are established versus the people who are coming. We've seen a larger pool of people from India, and we've seen some Jamaican has kind of held on. And if you're looking, there's 30 Jamaicans who live in the region, essentially, and a third of them have come in the last year. So we're definitely seeing a bigger change in our visible minorities, of which in our community, we see about 3.1%. Which is quite low when you're looking at Canada and Ontario. Canada in general has 26.5% visible minorities, which means 1 in every 4 people can be visibly identified as being non-Caucasian. And in Ontario, it's 34.3. So we have really maintained a very Caucasian population, and it is bound to see a change as more and more people are coming to our region. And this is the main reason we need to really be prepared in having those conversations with people who aren't used to interacting with people from other cultures and helping them understand how to communicate across cultures and how to accept people who may have a different background. And then there's different ways to come to Canada. There's very many streams that you can come, but they are put into 4 different categories. In Canada, the main one is typically economic immigrants. And what we're seeing is in our region, most people are coming in under the family-sponsored class, but over the last census period, we had 62% of the immigrants who settled in Central Elgin who did come from the economic immigrant, which means these are people who came in based on their language skills, their education, and their family. There's a point system that happens, and that means that these are people often who are work ready and who are easy to integrate into our workforce. And then we do have a large piece of our family sponsored. We had about 40% of the population here was family sponsored. We didn't see any refugees or other immigrants in that piece. I know that a lot of people here did hear about the Ukrainians who were resettled into our community. They would not fall under these statistics because they are not actually considered refugees in Canada. They are considered temporary residents. So that would be why their numbers aren't reflected in these graphs. And then another really important piece to look at is the migration. So this means people who lived in a different place before the census. So we have on the left, we have 1 year before the census was taken, 810 people, or about 6% of your population on that date, had moved from outside of Central Elgin. And when you're looking at 5 years previously, we had 3,820 people who had lived outside of Central Elgin. This could be people who moved from St. Thomas, or it could be people who moved from India. So it is definitely, it's something to think about. A quarter of our population within 5 years weren't here. They don't understand the things that may have been like long-term a piece of this community. The recent immigrants is about on par, or migration is on par with what we're seeing in Canada and Ontario, but we are slightly higher than Canada and Ontario with the 5 year, whereas Ontario had, both of them had around 22% of their population had moved from outside of those regions. So the biggest and most prescient reason that we're looking at immigration now is absolutely an economic one. Canada has declared that they are trying to bring in 465 new immigrants expected to arrive between 2023 and 2025. So, which means we're looking at a large piece of our workforce is coming from immigration. Our communities need to really think about how we are going to be attracting this workforce. This represents the largest increase in our workforce across the country. The people who are graduating from post-secondary school isn't a drop in the bucket compared to this immigration levels. So we really need to understand as a community how we can be more welcoming, we can get the news about our community out to these people who are looking for a place to call home. And Canada has also put a commitment in obtaining and revitalizing our smaller communities. And I think that Central Elgin would definitely fall into one of those communities that they would be interested in encouraging people to move to. So I did want to share a resource that has been developed through Western University, and it is a Welcoming Communities Toolkit. And this is a free toolkit, and I've included it in the package. It is quite lengthy. And this toolkit helps municipalities identify the 19 characteristics of a welcoming community. They are laid out and they absolutely touch on the work that is done at a municipal level. And there's two pieces of the phases that you can undertake. And the first one is measuring what it is that our community has. And then we can take those measurements and compare them with other communities, depending on what you want to say, either geographically or relative size. We can see how we fare against those places. All of the measurements that are suggested are things that are readily available. It doesn't incur an extra cost to you to get that information. And then the second piece of this project, which is going to be released in the next few months, is how to use those pieces to market this community as a way or as a place for people to come to. I would definitely, and STELIP would definitely help and help you navigate using that resource. And I have linked it, as I said, but it's also available in your packages. So that's the high level of everything that I wanted to mention today. We do have a lot of really exciting events coming up. We have August the 3rd, we have in partnership with Will Employ, an opportunity to look at how companies can recruit and retain immigrants. And that is, again, a free event that's happening, and it's 3 hours. And then after that, you can get some access to free consultants to help you change the way that you do your work within your employment. So we ask that you help get the news out to any employers that you know who have been struggling to either recruit or to retain their employees. We also have an event that happens every fall, and it's called Walk With Me, where we encourage our local services to come and network to understand what it is that's happening behind everyone else's doors, so we can have better referrals and we can increase the way that we understand how to serve immigrant clients. So I just encourage everyone here to sign up for our newsletter, to stay up to date with what we're doing, and to use these resources that are free and hopefully support you in your work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hontar. Can I ask the council if they have any questions, please? Very informative. Very much appreciate your time. And hopefully we will see you another time, but thank you again for your work, and appreciate you filling us in on a very worthwhile endeavor. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Moving through council to correspondence requiring action, SE 1123, a special events report for the CALIPSO Festival. Any questions or comments from council on this item? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Noble and Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors, that report SE 1123 be received for information, and that council tentatively approve the special events permit for the 2023 CALIPSO Festival to be held from August 4th to 7th, 2023 from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily, subject to outstanding information being submitted by July 20th, 2023, and the following conditions. The organizers complying with the special events policy as adopted by council, liability insurance being provided by the organizers of the event in the amount of $5 million, naming the County of Elgin and Municipality of Central Elgin as co-insured and held harmless, provision of certificates of insurance for no less than $5 million for any hired performers, acts, demonstrations, and performances, the fireworks being detonated by a licensed pyrotechnician and the layout being approved by Fire Chief Ray Ormerod. The final schedule and location of the event being approved by the Director of Infrastructure and Community Services. To the satisfaction of the Elgin County OPP, completion of a traffic plan to address movement of vehicles for exiting the village after the fireworks display. A site plan of vendor locations and approved list of vendors. Approval of the living history display in Hoffus Park, excluding fires and camping overnight in Hoffus Park. Council approval of refreshment vehicles for the event per bylaw 2711 section 2 exemptions. Refreshment vehicles being inspected by the Director of Fire Services, and the finalized list of refreshment vehicles being submitted to the communications specialist.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SE 1223, special events report for the Elgin Historical Show. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan, to Deputy Mayor Noble and those on the events committee. Can you explain more about what the situation is with the tents and whether or not to have people camping out for this? It seemed like that was sort of a point of contention.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The camping in that part is more so for them to not have to take the whole display down and then to set it all back up. And because of the stuff that they have, it would make it not feasible if they had to remove it. And I believe, just kind of looking at Mr. Brooks, I believe they're not having any fires or anything like that, and we're okay with that.
Do you wish to comment, Mr. Brooks?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the display requires them to stay overnight, basically to watch over the equipment that they have set up. It would be somewhat in contravention of the parks bylaw, which prohibits people from being in a park past 11 p.m. unless there is council approval to do so by granting the special events committee or by approving this report that essentially gives the campers the ability to stay overnight in the park.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Connors.
Just a comment through you, Mayor. These people that are putting on this display, this historical display, travel from all over Ontario. So I don't know how many are going to be staying on that site to protect the site for the night, but I guess it also alleviates costs of hotel rooms, et cetera, for them. So just for consideration.
Questions or comments? We have a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Halpin, Councillor Watson.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report SE 1223 regarding the 2023 Elgin Historical Show be received as information, and that council approve the special events permit for 2022 Elgin Historical Show to be held on Friday, August 19th to Sunday, August 20th from approximately 7:00 a.m. to 4:00 p.m., subject to the following recommended conditions. The organizers complying with the special events policy as adopted by council, liability insurance being provided by the organizers of the event in the amount of $5 million, naming the municipality of Central Elgin as co-insured and held harmless. The final schedule and location of the event being approved by the Director of Infrastructure and Community Services. Obtaining tent permits from the municipality if required at the applicant's expense, and council approval of the finalized list of refreshment vehicles for the event as per bylaw 2711, section 3 exemptions.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 1323, special events report, Port Stanley Comedy Festival. Questions or comments? I take it the mayor and council will be excluded from any jokes. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Seeing none, could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Connor, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Connor, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report SE 1323 be received for information, and that council approve the special events permit for the Port Stanley Comedy Festival event to be held from August 9th to 13th, 2023, between 4:00 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. daily, subject to the following recommended conditions. The organizers complying with the special events policy as adopted by council, the final schedule and location of the event being approved by the Director of Infrastructure and Community Services, council approval of refreshment vehicles for the event as per bylaw 2711, section 2 exemptions, refreshment vehicles being inspected by the Director of Fire Services, and the finalized list of refreshment vehicles being submitted to the communications specialist.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Letter from St. Thomas Cemetery. Any questions or comments on this? Councillor Halpin, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. It looks as though we no longer have a service agreement, but where do we go from here then?
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe on the grass part, they have something tentative that they're working on. And for the cemetery board, they're still happy to provide a service for the burials in the one cemetery that still has room for service. But at this point, the cemetery board's not in a position to be able to cut grass.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Watson, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that the correspondence from Heather Jackson, Cemetery Manager at St. Thomas Cemetery Company be received for information, and that staff be directed to investigate alternative maintenance providers for Kilmartin Cemetery, Wintermute Cemetery, Seminary Cemetery, Salt Creek, and Orwell Cemetery. And further, that staff be directed to investigate the proposed terms of a renegotiated agreement with the St. Thomas Cemetery Company regarding management of Orwell Cemetery.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2 items received for information. Elgin County Council highlights from 2 meetings. Questions or comments on those? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Halpin, Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that correspondence items number 1 and 2 be received for information and filed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to reports, Central Elgin Planning Office, we have CEP 3923, a consent application for 223 Prospect Street. Please, could I get a mover and a seconder? Call mover and a seconder, please. Thanks. Deputy Mayor Noble, Councillor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report CEP 3923 be received for information, and that council has no objections to consent application E5923 223 Prospect Street, applicant David Russell, subject to the following recommended conditions. The applicant shall obtain a minor variance for any zoning deficiencies relative to the severed lot and retained lot. The applicant shall remove the existing open lean-to on the severed lot identified on the sketch prepared by Kim Husted Surveying Limited, and any other encroachments crossing the proposed common lot line of severed and retained lots to the satisfaction of the municipality of Central Elgin. The applicant shall remove the existing parking area on the Franklin Drive municipal right-of-way and construct off-street parking within the limits of the retained lot to the satisfaction of the municipality of Central Elgin. The applicant shall demonstrate that the severed lot and retained lot have separate municipal services which do not cross lot lines to the satisfaction of the municipality of Central Elgin. The applicant shall enter into a development agreement with the municipality of Central Elgin to address administrative, technical, and financial matters. The payment of cash in lieu of the dedication of 5% of the land for parkland purposes. The municipality of Central Elgin be provided with a copy of the reference plan, and a drainage reassessment be done if necessary at the owner's expense.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next report from the Director of Infrastructure and Community Services, ICS 2023. Belmont Earth Power Upgrades. Comments from staff? Mr. Brooks, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Earth Power will be upgrading the underground hydro on Canterbury Place, Scarlet and Sherwood Avenue in Belmont next month. The opportunity exists for the municipality to piggyback on their work to install ductwork for future street lighting upgrades on all of those said streets. The cost to install the ductwork is estimated at $22,000. If council wishes to proceed, this could be paid for through the working capital reserve. This proposal does offer substantial cost savings for the municipality in the event that the municipality did want to upgrade the street lighting on those streets, as cost savings are made through the mobilization costs, drilling, locating utilities, et cetera.
Questions or thank you, Mr. Brooks. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Halpin.
We have, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a very similar situation that I know you're aware of as well in the Union area with some folks that have these old low light options on their front yard. And I know that those people would very much like to see that work done. Are we aware of any other comment of that kind from this neighborhood?
Mr. Brooks.
I don't recall any complaints for or requests for street lighting in this subdivision itself. As mentioned in the report, there is somewhat low-level street lighting that does currently exist in front yards. However, it's not to the standard that we would light the streets today.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Further questions or comments from Councilor, Mr. Perrin, please.
Just subsequent to Mr. Brooks's comment, council should be aware that there is an approved plan of subdivision immediately at the end of Canterbury Place. And that will be constructed as per the municipality's current servicing standards, and will have street lighting installed on that one block of approximately 18 lots. So that may be enough catalyst to initiate a request from the adjacent development on Canterbury Scarlet Place and Sherwood requesting street lighting in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Other questions or comments? If I get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Watson. Canterbury Place. Oh, I'm only on my, it didn't go to options on my page. My apologies. Well, okay, hold for 1 second. Deputy Mayor Noble. Councillor Watson, you'll second that?
Yes.
Thank you. Please.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report ICS 2023 regarding Canterbury Place, Belmont Earth Power upgrades be received for information, and that staff be directed to proceed with option 2 with respect to Canterbury Place electrical upgrades undertaken by Earth Power Corp.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. ICS 2123, water wastewater financial plans, and this is a follow-up. Ms. Gupta-Hurry, would you like to speak to this, or member of staff?
Yes, can speak actually. Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, following up the request from the council that we look into doing the financial plan in-house, staff has looked into it. Unfortunately, there is not much capacity within the financial department or the ICS, Infrastructure Community Services, because the financial plan itself includes the water wastewater study rates, which is an engineering kind of work, which is little bit beyond our capacity to do that. And it's every 5 years, this water rate study has to be completed. So when we went through all the details about the financial plan, that water wastewater study would dictate the financial plan. So we have proposed that we take the hybrid approach, that we do the financial planning, but the water wastewater rate study is done by a third party, and and I'm recommending Watson's only because they have done it a couple of times before, or I should say since the Walkerton happened and Mr. Perrin can correct me if I'm wrong, that they have done the water rate studies here at the municipality of Central-Elgin always. So it is a bit shorter period for anybody else to be brought in and do the study, because we have to meet a deadline of January 2020 something to apply for the license. And if the repercussion is if the license is not renewed, we officially are non-compliant.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta-Reed. Any questions or comments from council? Counselor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Or to Archana. So it requires an engineer. Do we not have an engineer on staff that can do that work?
I think, so our municipal act doesn't say certified people to do the study, like, you know how we say we are equity kind of people, but normally it does require a certified person. So for example, St. Thomas has a certified water wastewater kind of engineer who does that. We don't have that compliance staff at in our current makeup of the staff. And we actually have that position in the budget for this year. Mr. Brooks can correct me if I'm wrong. So we currently do not have that person who can actually assess the water wastewater assets and everything for us.
Counselor Graham.
So we have an engineer, but they're not certified in water, wastewater.
That kind of stuff where the compliance can be said like, yes, it is compliant. And that's why we're saying, because Watsons have all kinds of stuff there. So that's why we are recommending that. And we do have the proposal for hiring this staff this year in the budget as well.
Thank you. Ms. Gupta, can you tell me when this report will come back to council, please?
After I get the approval, I have to contact Watsons, and as soon as I can get that done.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we'll have an opportunity to see this before, you've got a January deadline.
Absolutely.
Okay, what just time frame? When would we as council get it
I
back?
haven't spoken to them, and I think it would be somewhere in November, December.
Which leaves us either a month or 2 months.
It leaves us a month or so, basically.
Okay,
So water, wastewater, but as I mentioned that I and Jeff, Mr. Brooks will actually work together with Watsons to ensure that the financial plan is done because there are 5 requirements for the license and financial plan is one of them.
okay.
So
just-
we will work together with that to make sure that that is done.
Thank you. I have Mr. Brooks and Mr. Graves. Thank you.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, typically these types of projects would include involvement from a steering committee or generally a couple members of council for input into how the rates are constructed.
Thanks, Mr. Brooks. I appreciate that. Mr. Graves?
Sort of leading into what Mr. Brooks had just said, perhaps when the consultant comes on stream, he could provide at the front end an overview of the process that they take to get to their study and introduce areas where there would be involvement from council. So you'd know that at the front end rather than getting the report at the back end and wondering where you got to.
Perfect. Great idea. Thank you. I have Councillor Connors, then Ms. Scoop to
Through you, Mayor, I believe we have some sort of a shared agreement with shared engineering agreement with St. Thomas. Is that correct or am I mistaken? No, it's not. Okay, fair enough.
Not that I know of, but Ms. Scoop to
So, Mr. Mayor, I also want to echo with what Mr. Brooks have said that we actually, when talked to Mr. Graves also, we spoke about having the steering committee, which will be like bi-weekly or something on those grounds where we will confirm that those meetings happen and we continue to inform the steering committee. And certainly a couple of members from the council will be part of that steering committee for this project. I'll treat it as a project.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Halpin, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report ICS 2123 regarding water and wastewater financial plans follow-up be received for information, and that council direct staff to prepare a financial plan for the water and wastewater systems as per Ontario Regulation 45307, using a hybrid approach utilizing staff resources in addition to a consultant.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If we could call the vote, please.
Councillor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Connor,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor
Can
Noble.
you guys hear me?
Yes.
Mayor Sloan,
Yes.
that's carried. Thank you.
Director of Financial Services, DFS 1623, request for tenders for the Tansley and Mills drains. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan, is there any difference in the approach that will be taken by our lowest bidder? I was really impressed by the price difference.
Mr. Brooks, Mr. Barron.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it's a fairly simple project. It's just a drain clean out. So no, there's no difference in any of the methods that would be used, but I think the municipality is fortunate to receive a good price on this one.
Thank you. Counselor Watts.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there's such a price savings there to make sure that job gets done right. Will we have a staff member there all the time watching that so nothing gets shortchanged at all? Just a question. Thanks.
Mr. Brooks.
Staff won't be on site full time. However, we will be providing supervision and keeping up with the project and the progress as we go forward. Just so council is aware, we did check references on this contractor and received good references. I believe they're located up in Norfolk County. So
Thanks, Mr. Brooks. Mover in a sector. Counselor Halpin, Counselor Watson.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Halpin, seconded by Counselor Watson, that report DFS 1623 regarding request for tenders 2023-33 Tansley and Mills drains be received for information, and that council accept the tender of County Line Construction Incorporated for 2022-33 Tansley and Mills drains in the amount of $55,534 plus all applicable taxes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ms. Leach, if you could call the vote, please.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Halpin,
Yes.
Counselor Watson,
Yes.
Counselor Connors,
Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Item number 2, DFS 1723, request for tenders, supply and delivery of a single axle dump truck with winter equipment and plow and wing attachments. Questions or comments from council and or staff? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder. Counselor Halpin. Counselor Watson.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Halpin, seconded by Counselor Watson, that report DFS 1723 regarding requests for tenders 2023-30 supply and delivery of one single axle dump truck with winter equipment and plow and wing attachments be received for information, and that council accept the tender from Premier Truck Group of London Limited for 2023-30 supply and delivery of one single axle dump truck with winter equipment and plow and wing attachments in the amount of $379,515 plus all applicable taxes.
All those in favor? Opposed? We could call the vote, please, Ms. Leach.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Halpin,
Yes.
Counselor Watson,
Yes.
Counselor Connors,
Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
DFS 1823, our 2023 second quarter variance report. Questions or comments? Counselor Halpin.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. Most of these, if they are up or down, it's like a small amount, but there's about $500,000 difference in revenue, in like 500,000 more than we expected in revenue in general government right now. How did that happen?
Thank you for the
So-
question, Ms. Gupta-Harit.
Yes, please. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. It's, as you remember, the green roof sales that we got. So it goes into general government working capital. So that's why it shows up a little higher. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Connors.
Through you, Mayor. Archana, when it comes to taxation, the first line item, 2023 year-to-date actuals, we don't know what the actuals are?
So we have just finalized the taxes, like now, which was not June 30th, July 17th, we sent the final tax bill. So next month, when I provide update, you will have the exact numbers. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Archana, the legal services, we're running about 220% over budget. Can we get a breakdown as to where that money went? Is that possible?
I can give you right now.
Okay, thank you.
It's all for freedom of information. All the legal bills I have gotten so far from Integrity Commissioner.
Thank you.
Can you repeat that, please? Councillor Graham's having some trouble hearing.
Oh, sorry. It's all about the Integrity Commissioner, the freedom of information request that we have been getting from residents or whosoever. It's about, if I can give you a number, but I've done my research here at the back end in my office, it's 21 in total that we have open. So we have only gotten 4 or 5 bills so far. And they are normally in thousands of dollars.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, a lot of that is freedom of information requests.
For now, it's all of that. Integrity, like that's what the invoices are, but we don't know because the invoices don't say which one. We just get the invoice and we have to make the payment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Connors, then Councillor Health.
Through you, Mayor. So these legal services, are you saying that the Integrity Commissioner is involved with every freedom of information
So
request?
if I understand the process correctly, and the CEOs can actually help me with that too. So they'll tell you the process and then I'll talk about finances more. Mr. Graves?
Mr. Graves.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of things. We need to separate freedom of information requests from Integrity Commissioner information. So if a freedom of information request comes in, that's basically processed administratively internally. Depending on the type of request, there may be some outreach to our normal legal counsel on behalf of the integrity or the freedom of information officer, just to double check on files or correspondence kind of thing. So that's one pail full. I think the larger bucket relates to requests that go to the Integrity Commissioner, and those will be generated from various sources. And in accordance with your agreement, then a request would go directly to the Integrity Commissioner, and he evaluates those requests. Obviously, they spend time on those things. It's my understanding, as Chana said, there's a number of open files, and I believe that within the next number of weeks, the Integrity Commissioner will be coming and reporting on those files and trying to close those files. But there's definitely been a significant amount of work done through the Integrity Commissioner's office. And we don't know, we're not privy to what the files are, who's made them. We basically have to wait and see what he has to report back to council on those files. So.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor,
Graves.
if I may, please.
One moment, please. I'm just
Sure.
going to go to Mr. Connors for a second.
Through you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Connors.
So you alluded to different sources where the Integrity Commissioner can be employed or can be requested to work. Can you expand? Can you give me some examples?
Mr. Graves?
Well, if someone thinks there's been an infraction of, essentially it's council's code of conduct. If there's been an infraction, then another member of council, a member of staff could reach out to the Integrity Commissioner and say, we think there's been this XYZ infraction. And then he would have to open up a file and report on that. And they have a process. You have an agreement, I think was signed in January with the Integrity Commissioner that outlines that process and what their fees are for doing that. I might also just remind you that basically every municipality in the province has to have an assigned Integrity Commissioner for the most part. But that's the work they do, and they respond to files that are provided to them, and those are confidential files that go to the Integrity Commissioner.
We're coming along. Councillor.
Thank you. Through you, I think that some of these things I can't answer because I have looked into the costs that go into them. So for example, with freedom of information, they don't typically go to the Integrity Commissioner unless the person that receives them has concerns with what they find and chooses to send them onward. So if there are any costs, they are at the administrative level, as Mr. Graves said. And of course, the person does pay their fee for that at the time of filing it. It's something paid for by the person requesting the information. And for the Integrity Commissioner and the files that they do receive, they do actually in Ontario have the right to assess whether or not they think a complaint is valid and to throw it out without examining it if they do think it's a waste of the municipality's time and money. So you can at least have some comfort knowing that the ones that do go through because the integrity commissioner has decided that there is a reason to do so. As to examples of situations that we already know have been paid for with our integrity commissioner, for example, Mr. Shipway called when Mr. Dobie wanted to do closed session meetings and had not talked with staff about that. And the integrity commissioner had a meeting with Mr. Shipway and Mr. Dobie to go through whether or not that would be an acceptable thing to do. So those are examples of times that they are called in and paid for.
Thanks, Councillor Graham.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Graves, my understanding is that just on that point that you had made that each municipality is required to have an integrity commissioner. My understanding is that we're not, that we actually can use the ombudsman instead.
Councillor, Mr. Graves.
Well, what I was trying to say was that there has to be someone filling that role, whether it's the municipality hires someone or defaults to the province. I think there's still maybe a cost with the province, but that I do not know. I think they still do charge. But I don't know that because I'm not gone down that road.
Thanks, Mr. Graves. Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Archana. Archana, you mentioned that most of that 22,000 is towards freedom of information.
The integrity commissioner bills, I said. The integrity commissioner's bills, I said.
Mhm.
Those are the invoices.
That's the 22,000?
Yes.
That's mostly freedom of informations.
Either freedom of information or the integrity commissioner who would have opened any files or something or been requested to open the files.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add,
Please.
please. I just want to also mention that anything that goes to integrity commissioner, once the file is closed, it's actually published. So the information is available on their website publicly. So I just wanted to add that piece of information for all of you.
Thanks. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions or comments? Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Archana. So $22,000 is between integrity commissioner or the freedom of information. Can we break that down into one or the other going forward? It would be kind of nice to have them separated out a little bit better.
I could absolutely do that. And I just want to also mention, it does not include the time that staff spends. So for example, we have a freedom of information where all the information comes in and they do that. It does not include that. It's staff time. I just
Okay.
want to make a point.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
no problem.
It will be just the legal cost.
Yep.
I'll do that, sure.
Any other questions or comments? If I could get a mover and a seconder, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you. How much of this represents counsel that we've received in closed session from our legal department?
I don't have any information on that. Sorry. Thanks.
Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Watson, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report DFS 1823 regarding 2023 second quarter variance report be received for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If you could call the vote, please.
Councillor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Connors,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Director of Fire Rescue Services Fire Chief, SO 823, the monthly alarm activities reports. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, if I get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Connors, Councillor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report FS 823 regarding monthly alarm activities report, June 2023, be received for information and filed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If you could call the vote, please.
Councillor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Connors,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Director of Asset Management and Development Services. June 2023 monthly bylaw report. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wondering why there's no charges laid on any of these reports that I've seen so far.
Mr. Perrin.
First of all, the first goal for bylaw enforcement of any bylaw is to get compliance. So some bylaws, we would be working with for example, lot maintenance or property standards. We'd be working with the landowner to get compliance with the bylaw. It's not something that we can just go in and levy a charge. We have to show that we are working with that landowner, for example. And with respect to charges, we would build a file that would then be taken to provincial offenses court to lay the charge on those two types of bylaw complaints. The other issue that we have is, for example, dogs running at large or dogs on beach or in a public place. That's not always easy to lay a charge because we have to have the personal information of the individual. So when a bylaw, and you'll see that in a subsequent report that we have with respect to feeding wildlife. So when a bylaw officer approaches one of those members of the public to enforce the bylaw, first of all, we would ask, we ask for compliance. For example, if it's a dog on a beach, please remove your dog from the beach. If they choose not to do that, then we would make the statement that if you don't remove the dog from the beach, we'll have to charge you under the bylaw. The next question is, can we have your personal identification so we can take and write the ticket? At which time we very rarely get compliance. And we're not the same as a police officer where we can force someone to provide identification. So that's typically the process that and the issues that we deal with when trying to lay charges. If there was more specific question, I'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Any other questions or comments? If I get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Halpin and Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report AMDS 3723 regarding June 2023 monthly bylaw report be received for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? If you could call the vote, please.
Councillor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watt,
Yes.
Councillor Connor,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
June 2023 monthly building report. Questions or comments from council? Staff? Seeing none, if I get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Connors, Councillor Watson, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report AMDS 3823 regarding June 2023 monthly building report be received for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If you could call the motion, please.
Councillor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Connors,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried. Thank you.
Feeding of wildlife on public lands. Perhaps we should ask staff or if they want to give a talk to this, because I know there's been a lot of questions asked. Mr. Perrin, please and thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So at the May 8th, 2023 meeting of council, there was correspondence from a resident requesting that council consider a bylaw to regulate the feeding of wildlife. As a result of that, staff have done investigation with other municipalities in Ontario that have similar type bylaws. Typically, they stem from not only wildlife on public property, but in some municipalities with respect to feeding of wildlife on private property where that wildlife could be a nuisance or even a public safety concern. So feeding of bears and things like that in areas of the province where that wildlife is more, we'll say, prevalent and relevant than it is in Central Elgin. So as a result, we did do that investigative work, looked at opportunities to be able to regulate that. If council chooses to implement a prohibition with feeding of wildlife, we would recommend that only be undertaken on that prohibition only applied to municipally owned lands. If it was on county owned or provincially owned, that would require them to pass similar regulation for us to be able to enforce that. But with respect to municipally owned lands, it would, if council chose to implement that, it would be on our public waterfront, public beaches, municipal road allowance, any municipally owned property. And we could do that through an amendment to the nuisance bylaw, which staff have appended to the report as well. Operational items that council may wish to consider is, in order to be able to enforce those bylaws on municipally owned property, we should be adequately signing those properties to inform the public, because back to Councillor Graham's comment and question earlier, in order to be successful in issuing those charges, and if they are disputed, we would go to court. In order to be successful at the provincial offenses court, we would have to exhibit that the public was adequately notified through signage on the property, based on other past experiences at provincial offenses court. So with that, there would be a financial implication that's not included in the 2023 budget of approximately, we would suggest 75 signs for the public property, and an average cost of $105 for the sign, as well as the materials to install the sign, whether it's on a lamp post. There would be stainless steel banding that would be used to install the sign to a lamp post, or in an area where a lamp post is not available, then separate posts, and then the labor to install those signs. So approximately $105 a sign. So when you look at that, there is a financial impact of approximately $88,000. The other implication that council should also be aware of is with respect to enforcement. So first of all, we don't have bylaw officers on duty 24/7 or 365 days a year. In the we'll say in the summer months, so May 1st through until Labor Day, we do augment our full-time staff with seasonal bylaw officers, and even then we don't have 24-hour coverage with those officers. So in order to be successful, we would need to be able to catch someone in the act, and then have them comply with providing identification, so we could issue a ticket under the bylaw. The next, if council chooses to implement the bylaw, we would require the bylaw be forwarded off to the provincial offenses court to have a set fine established, similar to our parking bylaw, or any other charges under the traffic bylaw. So there would be some time required to do that as well.
Thanks, Mr. Perrin. Councillor Graham.
I have a couple issues with this one. One of the top four, it was the top four issue when I was campaigning in Port Stanley, was the amount of signs that we have in Port Stanley. It went taxes, water, parking, and signage. We have, from what Mr. Perrin is saying, we have no ability to enforce it. We have, we're rarely able to make people comply with it. I think that in this situation, it would be much more beneficial if perhaps we assist the instigator, who I believe it was Forever Wildlife, with an educational program rather than prohibition, because we get further with education than we do with a bylaw that doesn't necessarily need to be complied with, and we have no way to enforce it.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan, are you suggesting that we were to devote an equivalent amount of money to supporting an education program?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I am not. I'm suggesting that perhaps the Forever Wildlife form a committee with, someone from council or any other volunteer, and we start an educational program.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, I do understand that there is a frustration about signs. And I mean, certainly if people would like not to have them, I understand why you're pushing for that. But this is also a public safety issue. I mean, as Ms. Burns pointed out to us, she was finding animals with different diseases and things that are being attracted into the community. And she even mentioned cases where diseases had transmitted to domestic animals, which may have been exacerbated by these wild animals coming into the space. So I do think we need to balance aesthetics with public safety and public health.
Thank you. Councillor Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I like the idea of educating the public because I believe that they wouldn't deliberately do something to injure the animals or put public and in danger. And the other thing is, if folks don't know, and it's part of what Mr. Perrin was saying, if folks don't know what the rules are, it doesn't matter if you put a sign up, but if they know that there's actual harm being done, if we can do a little bit of, I say a little bit, like a decent amount of education and public notice, I don't know that creating a infraction where people get fined through the province, the provincial offenses area, is going to really stop the amount of people that just don't know what they don't know.
Thank you. And to Mr. Perrin, well, as well as point about enforcement, we have some issues with right now concerns from constituents about fires on the beach or dogs on the beach. And we only have a limited amount of resources that can go and start talking to these folks. I mean, I see that it excludes birds, right? And appreciate the good work of the proponent, but some questions remain with me about the bylaw as it's being considered. Questions, council? Councillor Connors.
Through you, Mayor, this proposal, I mean, the animals are being exposed to people and houses because we continue to develop the area and drive them in that direction. And as Mr. Perrin has said, one cost is going to lead to another cost, is going to lead to provincial costs. So I think that the best play to start with from my side would be an educational process.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Graham.
I'd like to put the motion forward that we do not alter the bylaw to include this.
Seconder, please. Sorry, Mr. Graves.
I think just to help with that, there's a motion prepared and you just have to vote in the negative of the motion that's on. That would work. Okay.
So we have our mover and we have our seconder. We have Councillor Graham. Oh. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report AMDS 3923 regarding feeding of wildlife on municipally owned lands be received for information, and further that bylaw 2794, a bylaw to amend the municipality of Central Elgin nuisance bylaw, be accepted as amended, and that the implementation of the bylaw, including installation of signage advising the public of the prohibition, be deferred to the 2024 budget.
All those in favor? Opposed? Call the vote, please.
Councillor Graham.
No.
Councillor Halpin.
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Connors.
No.
Councillor Bogman.
No.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
No.
Mayor Sloan.
No.
That's defeated.
Okay. For our bylaws, are there any questions or comments about the bylaws before I look for a mover and a seconder? Sorry, Ms. Leach. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Pardon me. Take all the time you need. I didn't know didn't try to push it. I need a seconder for this. Is it a motion or an amendment? For a motion. Who's my primary? Ms. Leach?
Counselor Graham has moved.
Counselor Graham has moved.
Sorry, just to clarify, what was that?
If you could read it first, please, Ms. Leach.
I can read the motion first. We just don't have a seconder for it before we vote. I just wanted to note that.
So I'll just, is it based on what we were just talking about, the nuisance thing?
That's correct. I'll read it out, and if you have any amendments, we can do that, but we will need a seconder before we vote, just to. So the motion as drafted, that report AMDS 3923 regarding feeding of wildlife on public lands be received for information, and that staff be directed to connect with Ms. Colleen Burns regarding the establishment of a volunteer committee to support efforts regarding public information for feeding of wildlife on public lands.
Seconder, please. Counselor Connors. All those in favor? Sure.
Just perhaps this is best directed to Mr. Graves, but is that a thing that typically could be given over to our environmental committee to talk about? Or is that something that needs its own committee, in your opinion?
Mr. Graves?
Well, that's an interesting point. That is something that maybe they could work with the proponent on this. That'd be a topic that maybe could be added to their agenda. That's an interesting take on it. Yes.
We can call the vote, please. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We could call the vote, please.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Halp,
No.
Counselor Watson,
Yes.
Counselor Connor,
Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Now we're moving on to the bylaws. I think one is being struck. Any questions about 2, 3, 4, or 5? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder for the bylaws. Counselor Watson. Counselor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Watson, seconded by Counselor Halpin, that bylaw 2810, 2811, 2812, and 2816 be read a first and second time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. You could call the vote, please.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Halpin,
Yes.
Counselor Watson,
Yes.
Counselor Connors,
Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
I could get a mover and a seconder for the third and final reading of the bylaws, please. Councillor Connors, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Connor, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaw 2810, 2811, 2812, and 2816 be read a third time and finally passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If you could call the vote, please.
Councillor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Connor,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
No public notices. Motions and notice of motion. Number one. Is this what councillor is this? Oh, Councillor Halpin. Do you have a seconder for this motion?
I guess we'll see.
Okay. Is there a seconder for Councillor Halpin's motion?
Yes.
Councillor
I will
Bach.
second the motion.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to the motion. I did put a few of the emails that I attached in the appendix into a slideshow. Could we have that made available?
I'm not in. Oh. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So the motion here, after the preamble, is that I'd like for us to I would like us to cancel our work. I apologize. With Thomas-Elgin Consulting Limited and to cease before any further training sessions, reports, et cetera, come through. That's something that I'd like us to do because I'm not sure that the emails that I've received here indicate that we've actually had work that matches what we were promised and that is working in a good way for our community. And I feel that what we're doing, if we continue with it, is not in the financial interest of our community and doesn't help with our transparency. If you could please move forward, Susie. All right. So as you're going to see there, the first is a statement from Appendix A, the work proposal from Mr. Dobie. And what he said there to us was that he believes that our relationship with our staff is the most important thing in operating our municipality. And so I was concerned by these emails when I received them because I can see that, for example, he has made statements about actively not sharing information with the senior team, even when reporting to them after all of the interviews. And you'll see here that there are also emails heavily redacted that indicate conversations with redacted individuals about letting go members of staff, and then further conversation about how to make that happen either through his report or by actively working around his report and going at it through a different approach. My concern here is very straightforward, and that is that we can't in good faith come to our staff and recommend to them that we would like to improve our relationship with them, have better trust and more cohesion, while also asking them to do that through a mediator who doesn't appear to be looking for their safety and well-being in this process. So as far as that goes, I think that's pretty well clear. We could go on to the next one, and that is the redacted email. I know that a few members of the public reached out to me about this because it was so heavily redacted that they didn't feel that they knew what to do with it. Obviously, some of these things we are never going to know exactly what they say, but I would suggest that if I can put on my English teacher hat for a moment, in some places we can use the grammar here to take it apart and tell ourselves what it means. Seem has to go with a plural subject, which means we're not talking about one person that seems to want something. That would be seems. We would be talking either about you in the plural, or we'd be talking they. So that means that this email was sent to Mayor Sloan and is describing either Mayor Sloan and another person wanting to talk about the next redacted section, or Mayor Sloan and two additional people. It could go either way there. Or three, yes, it could be as many people as you like, but the fact is that this has been a closed conversation away from the council about how many people it is that would like to let someone go. It becomes a little bit nebulous in the middle where it could be that person speaking about their own opinions about payout, or it could be them speaking about another of the people involved in it. But if you'd flip to the next, we can see pretty reasonably here. You can flip, Susie. We can see pretty well by the grammar of it that it must be they, unless they were going to go back and change and say, mention 52 thing or something similar to it. The only real way that this can go is that there's three people having a conversation about the possibility of an individual person being let go. And then, as you will see in the follow through of that email, Mr. Dobie does say that he can either put it into the report and recommend it to the group, or that he has gone and spoken with other consultants and looked for ways to make that happen. So we need to acknowledge that this is not in good faith for our staff. This is the next thing that I'd like to speak to. Thanks, Susie. This is what we were offered was to have completely confidential interviews, and that then we were going to get back general statements about consensus. And in fact, the emails that I received show me that the report was very much constructed. So those of us who went into our interviews and interviewed did not know what other people were saying in their interviews. We did not know whether we would have a part of majority or not. We did not know what the general consensus points were going to be that came back to us, but it's very apparent in the emails that there were groups of people that had conversations together. There were people that had advanced reading and privilege of adding to these things. And as I brought up when Mr. Dobie made his report at the time, he had said to me outright that he had specifically removed some of the things that I had commented on, and not because they were not consensus, but because he felt that they were too sophisticated for a new council and could only be possible if my husband had taught them to me. So we can see that not only is there stuff actively removed and not based on consensus, but stuff actively added regardless of consensus. So that of course calls into question the virtue of the report in the first place. And then the next thing I'd like to look at on the next page here is the transparency component, which is something that the Municipal Act says we must represent for our constituents. And what I see here is that we know that Mr. Dobie worked very hard to have this all reported to us in a closed method. And in fact, the Integrity Commissioner had to intervene when Mr. Shipway called because it did not meet the standards for training, and he was trying very hard to cause it to be done as training in spite of not meeting the threshold for that. The Integrity Commissioner did consult on the thing, and presumably as part of our costs in that thing, and told him that it was not to be done in closed session. And he did continue to attempt to do that, and that only failed because multiple members of council refused to attend his closed training session. But he describes it being a downside that the public could conceivably use freedom of information to see his report if it were done in the ways that he's considering. And I think we need to worry about that as well, because freedom of information is a fundamental process that our public is supposed to be able to use to make sure that they know and are satisfied with the work that we are doing here. It should never be a downside to any consultant that the public could wish to receive information by that. Now, I will go to this next page here, and this will answer some questions about freedom of information. I know we had some talk earlier today about the costs of our freedom of information. So I'll start by saying, this is not the only freedom of information request that I have filed. When I file a freedom of information request, I pay for it upfront. And this one I filed and paid for on March 13th. And as far as I'd like to talk about transparency and also about the costs involved in freedom of information, I received a letter back first saying that the parties involved were not responding, and so more time was taken. And of course, this means staff time that is being taken to try and get parties to respond to a request when they are refusing to do so. And then another letter closing the request. Then on May 19th, I paid again to file an appeal to the Information Commissioner because Mr. Dobie had already told me that files existed, which he had refused to supply, and which Mayor Sloan had also refused to supply. So I need to point out to you here that there is a cost in that the Information Commissioner has gone through this. And then if the Information Commissioner finds that this is a problem in MFIPA and therefore a problem with our code of conduct, and they send it to the Integrity Commissioner, then it does become a cost there as well. So if you would like us to spend less on freedom of information, a great idea here would be to comply with freedom of information and not force it to go through a process. But the bigger problem for me, for the public, for transparency here, is that none of this would have been possible even for the public filing through the same process that I did, because the public didn't know as much as I did. When I filed on the 13th, I knew from some of the conversations I had had with Mr. Dobie that I did have concerns with what was going on. And because I was suspicious of the process, I
Can interject
decided.
for a moment, please? You have a motion on the table. We have a motion. You have a seconder.
Yes, and I'm going,
Okay, so I'm not sure how this is relevant to what you have here.
I'd
so
like-
We can read it out.
the procedural bylaw says I get the first turn and it cannot be interrupted even by the chair, and I would like to finish here. So my concern here with the transparency of it is that the only reason I was able to file to the Information Commissioner and receive these emails is because Mr. Dobie had told me about emails that he then did not provide to me. And so I was able to furnish evidence to the Information Commissioner that they existed. A normal member of the public who had not had that conversation would not have been capable of receiving these emails by filing that appeal, which means that we really owe it to the community right now as the people who have the power to file those appeals, as the people who have that evidence, to hold a light to the things that we consider are not serving them as they are meant to be served. And as the only people that are capable of getting this information, when we realize that we're wrong, that we regret the things that we voted for in, say, January, we need to be the ones to say it's not right that the public can't see this, and it's not right that nobody is complying, and we need to be the ones to look to correct this. So bearing in mind that this would be in bad faith as a working relationship with our staff, this is spending taxpayer money on something that does not appear to be as promised. And we are actively trying to hide it from the public if we don't put it out here for them to see. I do think that we should cease this relationship with Tim L. Dobie Consulting Limited. Thank you, Mayor Sloan.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Any other questions or comments? Not, I'm going to call the vote.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Bogman. Whereas the Tim L. Dobie Consulting Limited work proposal, Appendix A, proposed to, quote, establish an effective relationship between members of council and senior staff, end quote, through interviews, which would be, quote, completely confidential, end quote. And whereas the emails attached in Appendix B indicate that the work done until now disproportionately advantaged the views of individual members of council, involved reports to one member of council about the confidential interviews of the others, approached staff in an adversarial way, explored options for dismissing a member of staff, and attempted to conceal information from the public. And whereas Section 224 of the Municipal Act states that it is the role of council to ensure the accountability and transparency of the operations of the municipality and to maintain the financial integrity of the municipality, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Central Elgin immediately terminate its contract with Tim L. Dobie Consulting Limited, and that no additional time or money be invested in post-report training sessions.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated. If you could call the vote, please.
Councillor Graham,
No.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watts,
No.
Councillor Connor,
No.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
No.
Mayor Sloan.
And no.
The motion is defeated.
Thank you. Do we have any other business? And if I could get a mover and a seconder to go into closed session, please. Councillor Halpin, Councillor Connor.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that council proceed into closed session at 2:57 PM in order to address the matter pertaining to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're going into close. Would you like a 5-minute recess?
Councillor Graham,
Pardon me. Ms. Leach.
Yes.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Connor,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. If I could get a mover and a seconder to adjourn closed session and return to open session, Councillor Halpin and Councillor Connors. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that council adjourn from closed session and return to open session at 3:46 PM.
All those in favor? Opposed? Call the vote, please.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Halpin,
Yes.
Counselor Watson,
Yes.
Counselor Connor,
Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes, with a caveat, my phone is dying, so I'm not sure I may be here for any more votes.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried.
CS1, Port Stanley. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Counselor Connors, Counselor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Connors, seconded by Counselor Halpin, that CS1 regarding Port Stanley be received for information and that staff proceed as directed by council.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Call the vote, please.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Halpin,
Yes.
Counselor Watson,
Yes.
Counselor Connors,
Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes. Yes.
thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan,
Yes.
that's carried.
Thank you. Could I get a mover and a seconder for Civic and Environmental Committee membership CS2, please? Counselor Halpin, Counselor Watson.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Halpin, seconded by Counselor Watson, that CS2 regarding Civic and Environmental Committee membership be received for information and that staff proceed as directed by council.
All those in favor? Opposed? You can call the vote, please.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Halpin,
Yes.
Counselor Watson, Counselor Connors,
Yes.
Counselor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble,
Yes.
Mayor Sloan.
Yes.
That's carried. Thank you.
CS3, personnel update. We have a motion to read? Or do you want me to get a mover and a seconder? Go ahead, please.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads that the CAO Clerk Hiring Committee composed of Mayor Sloan, Deputy Mayor Noble, and Counselor Connors be reestablished as a personnel committee, and that Wendell Graves be retained by the municipality of Central Elgin for consulting services, including support for the ongoing VW negotiations until further notice.
Sorry, Counselor.
If we can just stipulate that in the motion.
Robin.
Mayor Sloan, if I may, can we, if I might, Counselor Graham, if it was ongoing as needed for VW, did you want two separate motions?
Can we not just put it in one motion? You need two? Okay, that's fine. Make two, that's fine.
All those in favor? I apologize. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Counselor Watson and Counselor Connor. Thank you.
Should I read it again?
Please, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Watson, seconded by Counselor Connors, that the CAO clerk hiring committee composed of Mayor Sloan, Deputy Mayor Noble, and Counselor Connors be reestablished as a personnel committee, and that Wendell Graves be retained by the municipality of Central Elgin for consulting services for a period of 1 month. And further, that Wendell Graves be retained by the municipality of Central Elgin to support ongoing VW negotiations until further notice.
We've had the mover and the seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Counselor Graham,
Sorry, I don't think we need to because I don't believe Counselor Bachman's on. Sorry about that, Delaney. Didn't mean to cut you off, but. And a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council. Bylaw 2815, if I get a mover and a seconder. Counselor Halpin. Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Halpin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaw 2815 be read a first and second time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I get a mover and a seconder for third and final. Counselor Watson, Council Deputy Mayor Noble.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaw 2815 be read a third time and finally passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If I could get a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Counselor Graham, or sorry, Counselor Halpin, Counselor Connors. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Halpin, seconded by Counselor Connors, that the regular meeting of council dated Monday, July 17th be adjourned at 3:53 p.m. and that the next regular meeting of council be scheduled for Thursday, August 24th, 2023 at 1:00 p.m.
We're going to switch it, I think, to 6:00 p.m. Regular meeting will be at 7. We'll do planning at 6. That's the will of council, I think, if everyone's good. We just made that up on the fly, Ms. Leach, so. Great, 7:00. Thank you for making that change. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks for those that are viewing from and that are here. Thank you, council.